Two guys who love to talk fantasy baseball.
3-2.
This is Full Count Fantasy Baseball.
In a year that has been so improbable, the impossible has happened.
Here are your improbable hosts, Dean Millard and Jordan Blundell.
Presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. Get in the game where you own the game.
All right, there we are, back for another episode, number 3 of Full Count Fantasy Baseball. My name is Dean Millard, and the dancing machine is Jordan Blundell, not to be confused with the new Dodger machine, Albert Pujols, who we will be chatting about, but you are a bit of a machine in your own right. I would like to see when the Edmonton Prospects get back to playing, you cutting a rug out on the field at different times, you know, whether you're coming out to make a pitching change, working the third baseline. You could work those dance moves into something, couldn't you?
Well, that's part of my contract this year, Dean. I'm forced to execute 4 dance routines per game.
Cutbacks. Everybody's got to put you in a little bit more, right, during this pandemic and cutbacks. So you got to get in there. All right, this show is presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. We're going to tell you all about that as we go. But if you consider yourself a fantasy pro, then you need to be in this league because the best fantasy players in the world are going to be doing this stuff. And we're broadcasting this on the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network, your one-stop shop for fantasy sports. And we are looking for shows to join our network. So we'll give you all the details as we go along, but we have to always start every show with a little bit of a question for you, sir.
This is a serious message. Peace and love. Peace and love.
All right, we've got 2 early games today, and I want to know from you, Mr. Blundell, between the Giants, Reds, and the Rays and Orioles that are going to be getting going in just about a half an hour's time, actually. We'll be able to follow them during the show. Who's the one pitcher you would take out of the 4 that are scheduled to go today? Cueto, Molly, Hill, and Kramer.
Well, Dean, considering my designation in my contract to perform 4 dance routines, I'm going with my man Johnny Cueto, who pretty much dances on the mound and provides the fans what they came for, entertainment. Johnny Cueto on the mound, entertaining, Dino. Those 4 guys, I want to watch Johnny Cueto pitch today. All
right, I like that. He's entertaining, and he kind of reminds me a little bit of Nuke LaLoosh with the kind of the wind up, right? Like breathing out of his eyelids, like Fernando Valenzuela. It's he's kind of got that quirky wind up. So I would pay to watch that guy as well. Okay, big thanks to our title sponsor, Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. It is the most realistic, highest stakes fantasy platform out there. Whatever sport UFFS builds mimics nearly everything about the league it's based on, and the prize pools are huge. I mean, the prize pool for our hockey league next year is starting close to $40,000. It's progressive. There's going to be 6-figure prize pools at some point, 7-figure prize pools. This thing is blowing up. Teams are selling in hockey for $51,000 US. And baseball is on the way. You see that logo there, the Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball. We're going to be auctioning off teams during the World Series. So check out uffsports.com. Join our Telegram chats. Get in the game where you own the game, and you can find out all the information that you will need. And you know, it's one of a kind. It's uniqueness, and I know that if you love fantasy, you need to be involved in this platform. All right, here is what we have in the opening lineup for you tonight. We're going to get to headlines, the top 5 stories from the past week in Major League Baseball. Jordan's going to tackle the best bullpens in baseball. I'm going to throw Baseball Thunderdome at him, where he has to pick 1 from 2 players I'll present. We'll talk about some waiver wire wins for us. Top 3 in the division. Jordan will look at a specific position. I believe it's shortstops this week in the AL East. Prospect Peak is where we'll take a look ahead at the future. And Rule Your League is something we will do to try to help you make your league better or make you better as a fantasy player with a sort of rule of thumb to live by when it comes to fantasy sports. And here's how you can get in touch with us.
You talking to me? You talking to me? You talking to me? Well, who the hell else are you talking? You talking to me? Well, I'm the only one here.
You know, I just realized I'm not going to be able to use that when you start coming back out to the studio or something like, and I love De Niro as Taxi Driver. But here's how you can get in touch with us. On Twitter, at Duck Millard, at Jordan Blundell. Hit us up right now if you're watching. Ask a question. We'll keep an eye on our Twitter feeds. And if you have a question about fantasy baseball, we would love to hear from you on Twitter. You can email us, fullcountfantasybaseball@gmail.com. If you're interested in Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network, it's ufsn@uffsports.com. And there's a couple of websites, fullcountfantasybaseball.ca and uffsports.com. Okay, man, here are the headlines that I am going with this week. Oprah is giving out no-hitters like crazy. So give me your best Oprah impression for no-hitters, Jordan.
You get a no-hitter, you get a no-hitter, you get a no-hitter.
Yep,
we all get no-hitters.
Everybody. 2 no-hitters in 24 hours. Corey Kluber of the Yankees tosses the 6th of the season. The record is 7, and he did it 24 hours after Spencer Turnbull of the Tigers didn't allow a hit versus the Mariners. First time since June 29th, 1990, when we just talked about it, Fernando Valenzuela and Dave Stewart threw 2 no-hitters 24 hours apart. Of course, Stewart of former Dodger and then Oakland fame and then Blue Jay fame, helping them get it done. And Kluber's no-hitter at 35 years old was the first, I think, since David Cone threw a no-hitter for the Yankees. It's just incredible what is happening with no-hitters. And, I know people are worried about it. I'm saying let's just ride it out. This is an anomaly. I know that the averages are down, but I don't imagine next year we're going to have 6 no-hitters within the first 2 months of the season. So let's just see where this goes. And then, not freak out too much about it and lower the mound or move the mound or do anything kind of drastic, because I think that this is an anomaly we should enjoy. Now, Shohei Ohtani, what is going on with him? Historic things, leading the league in home runs with 14, second most RBIs with 33, stealing bags, and for the 3rd time last night, he hit for himself in the lineup and then went from the mound to the outfield to stay in the game. He's not top 5 in most pitching categories because he doesn't have as many innings pitched as most starting pitchers. And the other notable thing about him last night is his velo was down. 29 fastballs, average speed at 91.3, a max of 95.3 miles per hour, whereas his seasonal average entering the game is 96.6 miles an hour. I've always said they're going to have to make a choice on this guy, but right now he's an MVP candidate with what he's doing. Speaking of MVPs, Mike Trout out 6 to 8 weeks with a calf strain, hurt jogging the bases Monday. Injuries are starting to mount in baseball for Trout. Also, World Series MVP Corey Seager, another star to land on the IL, fractured hand for the Dodgers shortstop. If you have Gavin Lux, you're happy. He's getting playing time at shortstop, makes him more valuable. Chris Taylor also getting playing time, but lots of guys. Paul DeJong, shortstop with the Cardinals, out with a fractured rib, similar to what Starling Marte suffered, and he's not coming back until June. And we talked about the machine in Dodger Blue. Future Hall of Famer Albert Pujols is now a Dodger. The defending World Series champs are heating up again, but they're still without some big bats. Seager, as mentioned, and Cody Bellinger. Pujols will help with some clutch hits at times, but I think he's really going to help with the young guys, Gavin Lux, Will Smith, Matt Beatty, and his presence could be a good thing if you have any of those guys in fantasy. Similar to what teams looked at with Josh Donaldson in the past, is bringing him in for some pop and some offense, but also to help some of the younger players. I don't know how much of an impact Pujols is going to have in fantasy, but he's put in some sweet spots so far in the lineup for the Dodgers. And lastly, this is a personal headline, is I made a decision this week. I made a trade. Realmuto for Dustin May in fantasy. fantasy and starting to realize that I don't have the horses to win this year in the Great White North Baseball League, a dynasty league I'm in with contracts, but I have some good pieces that I think with some extra first-round free agent picks I'll get next year, I'll be pretty dominant. So for next year, when May is back in the summertime, I'll have Kershaw, Bauer, Urias in May. I give up who's a guy who's been the best fantasy catcher over the last 4 years, but I get a stud pitcher for longer. I would be losing Realmuto next year. So listen, baseball is one of those sports where you can make that distinction early. You have a lot of games that you have to make up if you're falling out of it. I probably my Dodger bias is getting in the way, but it's not the worst pitching staff. It's a pretty awesome pitching staff to land 4 out of 5 guys for next year going into that. If I could get Walker, I'd be really laughing. But what about the headlines this week stands out for you? A lot of stuff going on in baseball right now.
Yeah, totally, Dean. And I'm kind of wondering if we're doing a Dodgers show around here. I mean, every other topic is Dodger blue, Dodger this.
Well, when we're the champs, right? And when you have so many guys impacting fantasy, it certainly makes sense to focus on the best team.
Hey, out of these headlines, Dino, Oprah giving out no hitters. I agree with you. Let's see how this plays out. Hitters are down. There's no secret about that. But this has been fun. Let's see what the pitchers could do with this. You get on a hot streak and who knows, we could go the whole summer without another no-hitter. It doesn't seem likely based on how many, have been ripped off here in the short regular season to date. But it's been fun to watch. And you know what? I had Kluber going against one of my fantasy teams yesterday, so that didn't help. But it's been fun to watch. Let's see what happens here. And then, you know what? The other thing I want to talk about is Shohei Ohtani. You think Mike Trout's the best player in baseball, but Ohtani's gunning for that mantle. What he's doing this year for the Angels is remarkable and outstanding, Dino. He's absolutely dominating at the plate. His numbers are crazy good. And what he's done on the mound has been excellent as well. Good note that you made. His velocity was down yesterday. That's something to keep track on here. There is a workload issue there. Nobody knows. Nobody knows what this is going to lead to. They obviously have been careful with him on the mound. They're going to need to continue to be careful with him on the mound. But he's a ton of fun to watch at the plate, Dino. Power, speed combo. I just saw a picture on Twitter of what he looked like when he signed a couple of years ago with the Angels and what he looks like now. He looks like a WWE star, how big and jacked he is, compared to what he looked like when he first signed. So, you know what? They've got a special one there. Let's see how he plays out as well on the mound. But offensively, he's a dynamo, dude. If you have him in fantasy, you're laughing. And I know we talked about this last week. I passed on him. I wasn't sure about the health. And the guy that has him in our fantasy league, the prospects, he's leading the league right now. So those are great headlines, Dino.
Yeah, and there's going to be a point where they're going to have to make the call. But just like with the no-hitters, let's just enjoy this while we can, and then we can worry about the call as long as they don't wait too long and then the workload gets and then an injury happens, right? That's the thing you just worry about. That's why you don't see any guys doing this, is because not many guys can. It's such a special thing. So it is really, really exciting. Also, just want to point out I'm watching the rerun of last night's Jets-Oilers game. So great job by the Jets last night. Congratulations to the Jets in some NHL. Okay, you mentioned that this is a Dodger show. Feel free to talk about the. You are going to talk about the Dodgers right now. So I'll just let you chime in with what you're going with the best bullpens this week.
Yeah, let's get into it. The bullpen look this week, we're going to, unfortunately, if I knew better, we're going to dive into the LA Dodgers bullpen. And you know what? They've been fantastic at the back end. I want to bring up the holds and saves combination. Some leagues, I would say pretty much every league's got saves. Some leagues don't have holds. Holds have become a pretty major contributor to the sport of baseball. and the value of relievers, using guys in different situations, and what was once considered a closer only type pitcher is now being brought in the 7th or 8th inning to hold the ball game. So the value in real time of holds has gone up, and you see that in some fantasy leagues adding holds to their stats categories. And let's hit on the Dodgers bullpen. We've got Victor Gonzalez. He's been solid, 8 2/3 over the last month, 8 Ks, 7 holds, low ERA. He's a guy they go to hold the lead, as in the hold category suggests. And the next guy up is Blake Trinan. He's one of my favorites, man. I think he's the future closer in LA. Over the last month, he's been dang near unhittable with 10 innings, 14 Ks, 4 holds, minuscule 1.8 ERA. He throws 98 miles an hour with about 1.5 foot of run on his fastball. He's one of those guys that he's just tough to hit. He bears down on hitters, and he's fun to watch. And let's talk about the grizzled veteran in the Dodgers bullpen who's been doing it for years. You know what? He's had a little bit of a bump in the road here in recent memory, as we've all seen in the playoffs. But you know what? As far as consistency is concerned, since Kenley took over the Dodgers closer role, a few years back now, he's been pretty money. This year, the last month, just like his career, he's been money. 10 2/3 over the last month. He's got 11 Ks. He's got 5 saves. He's got a .84 ERA, which is video game-like. And I got to tell you, Dino, the Dodgers, after their hot start of 14-4, they've tailed off recently and are kind of finding their winning ways again. But throughout that stretch of down games, their back end of the bullpen has been tremendous. So that hasn't been an issue. We've seen that be an issue for the Dodgers in the playoffs in recent memory is the bullpen. So far, so good in the regular season for the Dodgers, and that's our look at the bullpen look of the week.
Well, and a couple of things that plagued them is they were banged up. There were guys that were, they have obviously Bellinger and Seager are hurt, but they had guys in the bullpen are banged up, and now they're like Joe Kelly is back. He was pitched his 3rd straight perfect scoreless inning last night. That guy adds he adds a lot of entertainment to the game, but he adds a lot of value to that bullpen as well. Brusdar Gatterall is hurt. We're differing of an opinion. Kenley Jansen has been great. I agree with you. He's going to hit a wall at some point. Closers always do. Somebody, whether it's Trinan, I think Gatterall has an opportunity when he gets healthy. Somebody's going to take over, and they have a lot of candidates. But you're right about holds. I totally agree with that. I wish more websites took it more seriously. Like on CBS in one of my leagues, you got to hunt to find hold leaders and things like that. But a guy like Will Smith, closer in San Francisco, and now he's kind of an 8th inning holds guy in Atlanta. Some of those high leverage closers have kind of reinvented themselves. And the reason I like holds, and we'll talk about it later a little bit, is that it brings in more pitchers. It's not just the closers, and that closer role isn't exactly as defined as it used to be. So I do enjoy holds, and I do enjoy that you decided to showcase the Dodgers, because they really don't get enough love on this show. All right, let's get into baseball Thunderdome.
Welcome to another edition of Thunderdome!
You be cocky and arrogant, even when you're getting beat.
2 men enter, 1 man leaves.
Prediction? Yes, prediction.
And right now, I've got 2 men.
It's serious.
All right, it is indeed serious. Here is your baseball Thunderdome battle for this week, Jordan Blundell. We got a battle of third basemen. He was in the mountains, but now he is in the flatlands of St. Louis. And then you have Mr. Ramirez, who is just pounding the ball. So Arenado, Ramirez, battle of third base, baseball Thunderdome. They've got some pretty good numbers. They're similar in age. Who do you like and why?
Well, my guy, and a guy I've tried to get multiple times in fantasy over the last few years, Nolan Arenado. No knock on Jose Ramirez. He's a fun player. I really like Jose Ramirez. But when you put these two together, for me, it's Arenado. And the reason being is, and it's not really a fantasy play, and my baseball previous history being on the field and being around guys that play. Arenado's glove work is legendary, and we're talking Brooks Robinson-esque type glove work at third base. You know, you match up the fantasy numbers over the last few years. Jose Ramirez and Arenado are, you know, fairly similar as far as fantasy value. I'll tell you what, that defense in real time on the field, taking runs away, defensive runs saved. Nolan Arenado is my pick, Dino, when you put me up against the wall like that with two excellent third basemen.
Yeah, it's and you know, like we've said with a lot of these, you're not complaining too much if you end up with Ramirez. And I'm the head of baseball for UFF Sports, and will be the commissioner of the Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball. I am working. We're going to work in defense into this. It's got to be the most realistic, and sometimes defense costs you a game, and sometimes in fantasy, defense should cost you a game as well. So that's why it's going to be realism. It's you're going to want to not only get the guys that can, you know, put up the numbers statistically offense, but not put up a lot of errors and negative numbers and get that. So it's a great point that you make, because defense should count in fantasy, just like in the Ultimate American Fantasy Football League that we're going to have. Offensive linemen are going to count. So UFF Sports is bringing fantasy into a whole new level for sure. All right, we're going to get into waiver wire wins after this word.
This is Full Count Fantasy Baseball.
Let me think it over, will you, Charlie? I got a guy on the other line about some white walls.
Presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports.
I'll talk to you later.
Get in the game where you own the game.
Full Count Fantasy Baseball is part of the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network, your one-stop fantasy sports shop. We're building something all fantasy fans will love. We're looking for quality programming to join us. Reach out if you're interested in being part of the rotation. If you have a daily, weekly, or even monthly show, if it's about fantasy sports, we'd love to chat. Email ufsn@uffsports for more information. And get in the game where you own the game. We also have a pretty cool Ultimate Fantasy League baseball contest going in the UFLB Telegram chat, so join us there if you are so inclined to win some Zill and have some fun making some predictions. This week we're predicting the most RBIs in all of baseball for this week. But right now we got to get to waiver wire wins, and this is just where we're going to tell you about a few guys that we've picked up. You mentioned him earlier. I picked up Victor Gonzalez last week because he's big in holds for the Dodgers, and holds and saves are in the same category in my one league. So in his other numbers, as you pointed out, are minuscule lately. So I think Gonzalez, if you're in a league where, you know, if holds and saves are separate, then you'd be leading one category, and, you know, depending on how many relievers you have. But because they're in the same category, a holds guy with good numbers is I think just as important, if not more, than a saves guy that doesn't have the kind of the other numbers that you need. And the other guy I picked up is Adam Frazier of the Pirates. Not a lot of power from this second baseman / outfielder or RBI numbers, but an OPS of almost 850. He's still fairly young at 29. I signed him for 2 years in that league, and he's also on pace to get 12 steals, which is not bad. And as I mentioned, eligible at second base and outfield. And, you know, that's one of the things I look for when I'm picking up a guy. Where else can I use him in a pinch? Versatility is so important, and I know that's what you're going with your guy this week on the waiver wire, Jordan.
Yeah, Dino, we've talked about that versatility and the double designation a few times already, and I have a feeling we're going to continue to talk about it because it's an advantage. Off days, guys get hurt. You know, the ability to move a guy around, huge for fantasy value. So I'm going to touch on Nick Maton. He's a middle infielder with the Philadelphia Phillies. He's got a second base shortstop designation. Maton is a young guy. He's come up and competed for playing time and basically pushed Kingsbury out of that playing time that he had over the last few years with the Phillies. I'll tell you what, over the last 14 days, Maton's been really fantastic as a middle guy, as a middle infielder option in fantasy. You're looking at he's been 9 for 31 over the last 14 days with 5 runs, 2 home runs, 7 RBIs, 2 stolen bases. And that's what I call filling up the stats columns. He's not just one-dimensional. The interesting part about Maton is the fact that he hit both those home runs off left-handed pitching. And he's a left-handed hitter. And that bodes well for his opportunity to stay in the lineup, proving to his manager, Joe Girardi, that he can handle left-handed pitching. The power off that is excellent to have. You know what? If he's able to chip in 3 to 4 home runs a month, you're looking at a potential all-star player at the second base position. The fact that he can slide over to shortstop and pick up some fantasy value for you, even better. And he's mixed in some stolen bases. So a waiver wire player to look at this week is Nick Maton of the Philadelphia Phillies.
You know, those multiple position guys, as you mentioned, they can plug in anywhere and fill in for whoever. David Fletcher is a guy that of the Angels, he qualifies at third, second, shortstop, and outfield in our Yahoo league. Garrett Hampson of the Rockies, another guy, 3-position guy. Jonathan Villar of the Mets. They're not gonna, they're not maybe the sexiest names out there, but they're so valuable as popping around on days like this when half the teams are jetting off to their next destination, and you don't have enough outfielders. Okay, you can move Fletcher in there or something like that. So I'm with you, man. I think that's so important. And you're right. It is a bit of a theme because we're going to kind of talk about those middle infielders today. And we've talked about some multiple positions, and now you're focusing on the top 3 shortstops in the AL East in the last month.
Well, let's get right into this with Xander Bogaerts, Dino. This is an MVP candidate and a player that's just continually added to his game. In recent memory, he hasn't been a home run guy, and he's proving that with age comes experience, and with that experience, he's learned how to hit the long ball. You know what? Over the last 30 days, Dino, 18 runs, 9 home runs, 22 RBIs, a 316 clip, and a 1,043 OPS. You know what? A major league average is in that 770. So anything above 800, you're putting up a pretty good year. You get into the 850, then the special guys start getting into the 950. To put up 1,000 OPS over 30 days, that's MVP territory. And Xander Bogaerts is a real good one. And he's a plus defender, too, at that position. So the Red Sox have a real good one there. The AL East is getting a great chance to see a guy that's beginning to blossom as a middle order bat in a very tough division in the AL East. The next guy we'll touch on is Bo Bichette, the Blue Jays future, the hype, Bo Bichette. Over the last month, he's got 22 runs, 5 home runs, 16 RBIs, 4 stolen bases, filling up stat columns. He's a bit of a streaky hitter, though, Dino. You'll see his average go from 260 to 280, back down to 270. Then he'll flirt with 300. The OPS at 813 kind of reflects that streakiness. But the fact that he fills up stats columns and he can run, as evidence as the 22 runs and the 4 stolen bases, he adds to the stat column and provides big-time value. And now we take a look at our third-ranked shortstop in the AL East, and this is funny because we've got 2 shortstops from the same team, so that double designation comes into play again, Dino. Marcus Semien, and I've got to tell you, I made a mistake. I let him go early in our league that we have, Dino. He was hitting in the 200s, the low 200s, and just really wasn't putting anything together, and boy, was I wrong. Over the last month, Marcus Semien's got 17 runs, 5 home runs, 17 RBIs, 5 stolen bases, and he's been crushing the baseball at a 337 clip with a 962 OPS. And what that means is he's smacking doubles. And I do watch Blue Jay games, as it is the team that's on TV the most up here in Canada. What he's been able to do, Dino, is he's really settled in and started hitting breaking balls. At the start of the year, he was struggling with breaking balls. And now he's found his rhythm. About 100 at-bats into the season, you start to see those veteran players really take shape. I'm pumped for the Blue Jays. It was a great pickup. It's just as far as the leadership and defense. But the fact that he's putting up these kind of offensive numbers, in the middle infield, and frankly, mostly playing at second base. Those are big-time numbers for a second baseman. So top 3 in the division, we've got Xander Bogaerts, Bo Bichette, and Marcus Semien of the AL East.
Yeah, it's impressive. The Blue Jays have a really good stable. Not everybody's going to be firing on all cylinders. Biggio's struggling a little bit, but the other guys pick him up. So I love that. And again, the multiple position comes back, and you might say that's like a cornerstone of fantasy is having guys. Whatever sport. I guess football is a little bit different, although in the Ultimate Fantasy American Football League, there's going to be a lot of different options. But, whether you can, in hockey, if you got a guy that plays all 3 positions in the forward, well, you've got so much more flexibility. Same in basketball. But baseball, it really, really shines through. Okay, we're going to take a look at the future in Prospect Peak when we come back.
This is Full Count Fantasy Baseball.
Why are you shaking me off?
I want to bring the heater to announce my presence with authority.
This guy's a first ball fastball hitter. He's looking for heat.
Oh, yeah? So what? He ain't seen my heat.
All right, man. Give him your heat.
Presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports.
Why is he always calling me me? I'm the guy driving a Porsche.
Get in the game where you own the game.
God, the sucker teed off on that like he knew I was going to throw a fastball.
He did know.
How?
I told him.
The legendary Crash Davis and Nuke LaLoosh. If you have not seen Bull Durham, what have you been doing for the last 50 years or however, or 30 years or whatever that movie is? It's amazing. So is Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. They are the presenting sponsor of Full Count Fantasy Baseball, and they are the most realistic fantasy platform around. We might have to get a Crash Davis NFT going. The Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League, by the way, which is the league that is going right now on the platform, mirrors everything about the NHL, from a scouting program to playoff series. We just had a playoff draft where the non-playoff fantasy franchises can lease their players out to playoff teams, and these are going to be NFTs. These are going to be digital assets on the Zilliqa blockchain. Anybody can get in the game and own the game, own the NFTs, buy a franchise. The Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball will be launching gameplay next spring, but we will be auctioning off franchises during the World Series this year. www.uffsports.com is where you can get in the game, where you own the game. And real cool scouting program on there too. And this is something that is perfect for you because you're always on the lookout in a normal year for those top players. You're recruiting, you're watching a lot of college games. You went down to do some touring, so the scouting platform would be perfect for you once you guys get back to a normal year for the Edmonton Prospects, because you're kind of doing that already, looking at the top players out there in college baseball.
Yeah, Dino, I've been really fortunate that I've seen some big-time players at the college level over my journeys and recruiting trips down south, and I hear you, man. I'd love to get involved in that. It sounds pretty exciting.
Yeah, you're going to be involved for sure. I think you're going to really, really like it. All right, let's take a look at the Prospect Peak right now, and I love it. I told you about my prospect, and you were kind of stumped on who this guy is, and probably a lot of people are. He doesn't even have a picture on my fantasy league for. It's just like the people have the Twitter profile and there's nothing there, just like the blank gray head. That's what he has. It's Jarren Duran, an outfielder with the Red Sox, power hitting lefty, has crushed 5 home runs this year, 4 in the past 5 games. He's just 24, and he went through a swing change at the start of last year, but there was no baseball to watch it. He was just at the alternate site, so not a lot of people knew what was going on with him. He also has some speed to go along with that power. And, in one of my dynasty leagues, we have 6 minor league spots, probably going to grow. That number's probably going to grow next year, but we have 6 minor league spots. And, I'm always looking for guys that have flown under the radar. That's, you can get a jump on that. So I'm hoping Jarren Duran is a guy. He had a monster shot the other day. It's on Twitter somewhere. So that's the guy I'm going with. And, I didn't know this was a Blue Jays show for you here.
Yeah, well, I haven't officially proclaimed the Blue Jays to be my team, but the coverage up here, as you know, Dino, if you're on Sportsnet, it's fairly Blue Jays heavy. So, but this goes beyond just the Blue Jay fandom. This kid's pretty special coming up the pipeline, and the Blue Jays are lucky to have him. You take a look at Alex Manoah, the Blue Jays, top pitching prospect in my opinion. Nate Pearson's kind of already been up there, so for me, I move Pearson out of the prospect realm into, he's a major leaguer at this point that just can't get on the field as much with his injury history. So Alex Manoah, his rise to top prospect-dom has been pretty plain and evident to see. He started off at West Virginia in the Big 12 and put up crazy numbers on his way to getting drafted as a junior. He went to the Cape Cod League, which is a spot where a lot of top prospects end up spending a summer before they get an opportunity at pro baseball. In the Cape Cod League, 33 in the third innings, 15 hits, 48 Ks, and 11 walks. So you're looking at a 4.8 K to walk ratio. That's outstanding. Anytime you're above 3, you're a pretty good pitcher. You're a pretty good prospect. And he was clipping at a 4.8 rate K walk. Then he gets an opportunity in low A with the Vancouver franchise for the Blue Jays, the low A affiliate. I believe they were actually playing on the road, but he ended up throwing 17 innings, striking out 27 guys with 5 walks, only giving up 13 hits. So then he enters into what was a weird year for all prospects last year and trained at the alternate site, so there were no numbers to report on. And he goes into season this year in 2021 at the AAA level, and he's been on fuego, Dino. He started off 12 innings, 2 starts, 17 strikeouts, 2 walks. He's only given up 3 hits. This guy is coming up to the big leagues. And an interesting point I want to bring up is how prospects and pitchers work is big league clubs were going to try and train their arms. So, a 20 to 25 inning jump every year is ideal as they come out of college. They maybe have thrown 100 innings at the college level with summer ball, so they're entering their first year of pro ball somewhere in that 100 inning range. Through the first year, they want to go 100 to 120. The next year, if everything goes well, 120 to 140. And they want to enter them into the big league as prospects in that 120 to 140 range so that they can maybe get to 160 innings pitched. Depending on what Manoah has done at the alternate site last year, if that's his trajectory, he's throwing 12 innings this year. Manoah could enter the Blue Jays rotation and basically be an every fifth day guy. If they're smart and creative with this, they can have him up there all year and then maybe decide to push him a little bit at the end of the year if they've got a chance to make the playoffs. So it's not a question of what if, it's a question of when with Manoah. He will be called up by the Blue Jays, and I expect him to make an immediate impact at the big league level.
Well, it's quite interesting. The Jays just have more, not just more young arms, but more talent coming on the way.
Smokey, this is not Nam. This is bowling. There are rules.
I don't think it taints it.
What you talking about, mister?
You're crazy. I like you, but you're crazy.
All right, we're talking about Rule Your League now, where, we'll give you some rule suggestions. Some of them are a little bit out there, like, pitchers hitting stats, although unless you have that Ohtani guy. But, and I jokingly threw out a no-hitter rule in our first episode, kind of as a, tongue-in-cheek because there seem to be so many. And, Ken, you were talking about it again this week. I think this is an anomaly, but it depends how creative you want to get. You imagine the wins you would have this year with a no-hitter rule in your league. It's pretty wild. But my rule that I'm proposing for people to check out, and this is something that Jamie Thomas and I talked about in one of our leagues. I might actually propose it as the commissioner of one league and see if it gets through. But the trade deadline is the end of the regular season. So there is there's a trade deadline obviously for the playoff teams, and we always have a toilet bowl, but you just let people trade right up until the regular season, and then during the playoffs you allow waiver wires. We allow it once the playoffs or after the trade deadline. Any pickup is only a 1 year, so it automatically goes back. But what do you think about just letting teams trade right up to the regular season? You would obviously decrease the amount of trading, I'd imagine, but you allow more teams to see if somebody's going to get hot and allow them to go on a run at the end of the season. It's a little bit out there, and it's not very normal compared to most leagues, but it does bring in another element to keep more teams involved so they're not selling off at the trade deadline 3 or 2 weeks before the season ends.
Yeah, Dino, good topic of conversation. For me, I'd like to see the deadline, be a little bit earlier than the end of the regular season. And unless, where I could see this work, Dino, is if you've got a really deep league, if there's 20 plus teams, 24 teams, or even, the max teams of all the big league teams, I could see that kind of making sense, because in real baseball, you have that opportunity to get on the waiver deadline, which they've eliminated that. But in the past, you were able to pick up a guy that's cleared waivers, in late in season. And that's where you see a guy like Jose Canseco clears waivers and ends up on the Yankees.
Yeah.
So I think the deeper the league, I think that makes sense. I think the smaller the league, the leagues that have 10, 12 teams, I like to see the deadline be a little bit earlier. And you know what, just to touch on your point, Dino, I think that it's important as leagues mature. Now I've got 2 leagues going. One's been around a long time. The other one's with you and some other fellas. It's the Prospects Baseball League. We've only been around, this is year 2, and we haven't got into the draft picks and the full scale of fantasy baseball, which I think is going to come in that league. I think it's important as a league is maturing, can handle those kind of transactions, that draft picks are included in deadline deals. It's a great way to build the teams that have struggled through the year. They can stockpile some draft picks. I think it's a must that draft picks are included at the deadline, and I think we'll see that in our league entering our second year here, that draft picks are going to be considered for trade here coming up.
Indeed. Do you have any kind of rule of thumb or a rule that you want to add in today?
Well, I wanted to touch on your deadline deals, and that the draft picks need to be included. But with the caveat, in young leagues, I think the league needs to establish itself. You've got ownership. You need to make sure you've got some foundational owners, that you don't have to go out and find new guys every year, and they have to accept a down team that's been depleted of draft picks, and they're looking at a year or 2 before they can really get competitive in a league. So I think the important part is having foundational ownership. Once you have that, you can really start adding to the fantasy baseball experience, adding draft picks, adding multi-year draft picks. 2024 first rounder is in play. That just increases the fantasy experience. So just to touch on your point with the trade deadline, I think if you do have foundational owners, you can get crazy with those draft picks.
All right, let's get to weekend watch, and then we'll wrap up the show. I'm looking at the Orioles and the Nats Friday night, because Steven Strasburg is back in action, and I fell in love with that guy on that World Series run and what he did, and so I'm rooting for this guy to get back. And you talked about it before when young guys come up. Well, he's the poster boy for innings. What was the threshold, right?
Yeah.
The cap that they put on him that year. They wouldn't let him in the playoffs, so it was so thrilling. So I'm looking forward to him getting back on the mound, because I think baseball's better when he's on the diamond. What's your weekend watch for?
Yeah, great point, Dino. You know what? I totally thought you were going to go Dodger-Giant rivalry. So I was a little bit unprepared. Yeah, I was a little bit unprepared, because I wanted to touch on the Midwest version of the Dodger-Giant rivalry, and that's the Cubs-Cardinals. I mean, those fan bases detest each other, as do the Giants and Dodgers. So like our screen is right now, Dino, the split screen, those 2 matchups are pretty similar in fandom hatred for each other's franchises. So it'll be a fun weekend to watch those rivalries take shape.
Yeah, Jack Cookson's inbox is going to be like, I'm just going to fire text messages at him. The Dodgers are heating up just in time to pound the Giants into the sand. And that is going to just about wrap things up. We do have to give one final word to Crash Davis of Bull Durham.
You be cocky and arrogant, even when you're getting beat.
And I want to let you know that Full Count Fantasy Baseball is part of the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. UFSN is your one-stop fantasy sports shop. Follow them on Twitter at UFS Network and find the UFSN on YouTube. You can email UFSN at uffsports.com. It's green again, man. It was white for a little while with all the snow that we had. But I got the gloves ready to go, get out and play some catch, go have a catch with Dad or something like that, like in Field of Dreams, right? So we can get out there, we can enjoy it again, and hopefully we'll be watching you with the dance moves and the prospects on the field at some point very soon. But thanks so much for doing this. Man, this is so much fun talking fantasy baseball with you again, because we only had a small segment before. Now we have an entire show. And as we talk about, even when you're on the ball field, you're thinking about your fantasy team. Fantasy baseball is front and center for both of us.
Yeah, you know what, you're going to lose some games as a manager in summer ball, just because you're trying to decide what your fantasy lineup is, and that's just the way it's going to be.
All right, one final word from me. You know it. Ban the shift. Have a good weekend in baseball, everybody.